And we also found that all of the state's securities, I was ex officio trustee of the state various pension funds, all of the state's securities were kept in a vault. And we had to have a regular police force, you know, guards on duty all the time to protect this vault in the state capitol. So we arranged to have all of the securities transferred to banks. They would become the custodians, and they would be rewarded by a few deposits. Well, that brought our costs down very substantially. At the same time, we were helped by rising interest, but we put much more money at work earning interest. And the Ford Foundation conducted a study which concluded that this was the model for the nation. And next thing I know, among other things, I'm getting invited to New York by Mayor John Lindsay to act as an unofficial advisor to him on investment of New York City funds. He was a fine person, John Lindsay, the old moderate, you know, rational Republican type. So, there are, you know, some stories. The state treasurer had a special responsibility in Cook County for examining the contents of all safety deposit boxes for people who died. This did not apply statewide because the legislature had apparently concluded in its wisdom that all the crooks and their state deposits were in Cook County. Right. But I had to have, you know, people part-time to be present when the safe deposit boxes were being opened. And you can imagine why. Somebody averts their eyes and a lot of money could be taken out and escape state taxation. So we put an end to that. I remember once I guess statute is run, or I'm not going to get caught, but one county official, the Fighting Viking, what was his name? He came in, he was the county recorder of deeds, and there was a practice then, which you'd remember from the law firm. We used to have a special drawer in the county recorder's deeds where the lawyers would make little deposits at Christmas time.
Right.
He came into me once and said that his wife had just died. And I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, what can I do?" And after a lot of hemming and hawing, he finally said, "Adlai, that's where the money is, the cash." "Oh, Sidney, I'm so sorry, I didn't understand." Sidney Olson.
Right.
"I'll put the right person on right away." Well, I put the right person on right away. Every penny got counted. There are a lot of characters around this. I remember Larry Hansen, who was our friend, and you had a service for him here recently. He was one of my lockbox examiners, and he used to tell the story about how all the expectant heirs were standing around waiting. They opened up the box, and there was an old cheese sandwich wrapped in wax paper with a little note which read, "And this is for all my hungry relatives."
I remember in 1970 when I was working in your Senate campaign, hearing reports from some of the people who were part-time lockbox examiners. So I heard some of these stories myself.
We had good times. Those days. There was a lot of joy and humor in politics.
Well, let's move ahead a few years, and I think one of the most dramatic moments in your life was a certain event at the family farm where Mayor Daley appeared, and some dramatic news that changed your life was delivered at that event. And maybe you'd like to tell us about that event.
Yeah. Well, my father's home in Liberty Valley at Bass Lawn, it was the scene of many exercises in old-fashioned democracy over the years. And after the '68 convention, that was the stormy one here in Chicago, where the Chicago police overreacted. The party, Democratic Party, created the so-called McGovern Commission, or Party Reform Commission. We in Illinois had what was called the Committee on the Illinois Government, a state reform commission. I was on both, so suggested that we have a great rally out at the farm to celebrate reform and maybe raise some money for both these organizations. Well, I invited Mayor Daley, invited all the, the politicos and reformers. Beautiful fall day. It was for children. There were monkey, balloons and hot dog stands and pony rides. And just as the program was about to start, I had George McGovern, Fred Harris, the National Committee Chairman, Jesse Jackson, you name it, all Harold Hughes, senator from Iowa, as well as the local reformers. And just as the speaking program was to begin, up comes this entourage, from which steps the boss, not exactly a reformer, but he, with his entourage, including Rostenkowski and some other non-reformers, we all line up on the platform, begin our speeches, and somebody comes up to me and says, Mayor Dirksen has just died. And I said, don't tell a soul. And then went to Senator McGovern and said, when the speaking program is ended, would you get up and eulogize the dead senator, Herbert Dirksen? And he agreed, and so I went to Jesse Jackson, said, no, told him what had happened. When the senator stops, when his eulogy ends, would you, Jesse, get up and pray for the dead senator? Well, it went off perfectly, and as Jesse started praying and praying and praying, a beautiful black choir that he had brought with him from the South Side began chanting the Battle Hymn of the Republic. 15,000 people suddenly were chanting the Battle Hymn of the Republic. And when it was over, there was just no doubt who the candidate was going to be. In fact, somebody came up to me and said, Adlai, why don't you walk down there to the banks of the Des Plaines River and see if the waters part? I was soon running for senator.
And what about, at that time you had allied yourself with those who were calling for reform and aimed, reform in those days was aimed directly at Mayor Daley. But there had been this event, reconciliation kind of event. What was his role with regard to your candidacy in 1970?
This was in '69.
'69.
And to go back 1 year, in '68, I had gone before the slate makers and requested to be endorsed for governor. That was the place I had always wanted to serve. And I was uncertain about defeating Dirksen. That would have been tough. And Mayor Daley came to me and said, we can't slate you for governor. We're going to slate Senator so-and-so, whose name I can't remember either now, a wonderful, fine person. But we can slate you for the Senate against Dirksen. And so I said, okay, and then I went back before the slate makers, and one of them said, will you support the war in Vietnam? And I refused to support the war in Vietnam. And Daley called me afterwards and said, Adlai, just say you'll support the war in Vietnam. Once you've done it, got the nomination, just go and do whatever you want. I don't think he himself was enthusiastic about the war in Vietnam. The rumor is that Johnson had called. In any event, before it was all over, every single candidate, right down to Metropolitan Sanitary District, was swearing support for the war in Vietnam. Mm-hmm. I refused to do that. And in the words of the Tribune, I was dumped from the ticket, which may have been a good thing.
Another godsend.
Yeah. He was trying to help, but I've had the sort of suspicion, too, more than a suspicion, that he demonstrated we had a good relationship, but he wanted to use me, and I could cause a lot less trouble in Washington than in Springfield as governor. He didn't. I don't think he wanted me to be governor.
So 1970 comes. You were the sort of anointed by the heavens candidate at that event. Was there any question that you'd get Mayor Daley's support when the primary came along? Or the slate making, I suppose?
Oh, I'm a little vague now. I had to back off. I think Alan Dixon. There were one or two people who were, interested, but they knew the outcome. I don't think Mayor Daley ever said anything publicly. I just went before. I don't think he ever did. You just went. He did it behind closed doors with the slate makers, and he wasn't always behind. He had his people. Right. Behind those doors. And incidentally, he was very clever at reconciling the Irish and the Polish. Rostenkowski was always sort of pushed out in front. Rosti was not admired by Daley, but he exemplified the Poles and was one way he kept them together. But Daley stayed in the background, but somehow or other the word got around. You knew what he wanted. I don't remember him being there when I was finally slated for the Senate. Presently, in the room.
Right. Well, why don't we? We're almost out with this tape. Why don't we change the tapes, take a slight break, and then jump in with the rest of that campaign?